was my job.
It's on.
It's on now.
Yes?
Yeah, it should have been read up.
Just seat up here, Dave, if you want.
Yeah, but I wasn't even getting a picture. Oh. Okay. As soon as you do roll call, then I'll let you know about the other ones.
Cool.
I think this is 3 for today, right?
I think this is 3.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call the December 20th meeting of the Hudson Valley Regional Council to order. If we could start with a pledge to the flag and a moment of silence, please. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you.
Is there a way we can fix the flag so it's standing upright like it's supposed to be?
Sure. In the meantime, while we're doing that, if I could ask Steve to call the roll call, we're here. And just a couple of housekeeping rules for this evening. Any time that you're going to speak, we're going to ask that you just announce your name for not only the stenographer, but also for our minutes. So if we could kind of keep that as a quorum, that would be great. Keeps me from getting yelled at. Steve, please.
Just bring it out 6 inches this way. As long as it's straight.
Does it fit in the stand?
Gotta make it small like
ceiling, I think it's in the ceiling.
Well, while that's going on, I will do roll call.
Please. Thank
Dutchess
you.
County, Chrissy Amy. Okay. Dave Violante.
Here.
Joan Siebert.
Here.
Anthony Singh.
Here.
David Jensen. Stephen Scully Beeman. William Marshall.
Thank you, guys.
Orange County, Michael Bigg. Rich Haley. Wayne Chang.
Here.
David Grass.
Present.
Israel Knobloch.
Here.
Frank Cassanite. Michael Wachowski. Nancy Pfeiffer.
Here.
Putnam County, Robert Cuomo.
Here.
Dave Jacobson. I am here. Steve Wygand. Mike Mikulski.
Here.
Hang on a second. Nick Falcone. Sarah Baker. Rockland County, Bernice Garetti.
Here.
Did I say that all right? Okay.
Karate.
Garetti. Nick Rozecki.
Rusecki, he's not here.
Had it the second time. Not here?
Not here.
All right.
He's not here.
Tim Egan.
Here.
Desiree Leone. Glenn Alvin.
Present.
Teresa Hamilton. Ephraim Tober.
Here.
BJ Leidner.
Here.
Sullivan County, Albie Bachman.
Here.
Alex Rao.
Here.
Neil Meadow. Norman Prentice.
Here.
Jeff Ashdown.
Here.
Sean Lewis. Ulster County, Richard Parrish.
Here.
Kelly Nelson.
Here.
Karen Pardine. Pardine. I'll get it eventually. Matthew Goodnow. Austin Heller. Cody Carroll. And then the REMSCO staff. Bill Hughes.
Yeah.
Mark Papish. Karen.
Here.
Jeffrey Crutcher.
Have we met a quorum, sir?
Yes, we have a quorum.
Okay, we have 2 actionable items on the agenda tonight. They're both at the end of the agenda. For time preservation of our stenographer, we're going to move them up to the front of the agenda, unless there's any objections. Before we start down that road of the two transfer of authorities, if Karen and
Yeah, we just need a
Steve
minute.
will clarify who can vote, because we have a couple of alternates that are eligible to vote for Erie County. So give us a couple of seconds, just so that we clearly identify who can vote in tonight's transfer of authorities, please. And while they're doing that, I'll take a couple of minutes to just drive home a couple of points. First of all, thank you. This is a phenomenal turnout. I appreciate it.
Did Cody Carroll say he was here?
The program agency staff
From
appreciates it.
Ulster?
But we could make their lives a tad bit easier
No. Okay.
if I could convince each and every one of you, and I will do it with a hug and kiss if you prefer.
Okay.
If you have not logged into Boardable,
Nancy
Please log
applied
in.
for Orange County. Nancy's
inside
gonna vote.
Boardable, you have the ability to acknowledge
Sullivan
when you're
County.
going to be in attendance, whether you can't be in attendance,
Oh.
or whether you're sitting on the fence because you're not sure what your agenda is.
Jeffrey Ashton, so
And
we
just
gotta
so you
find out
guys know,
which
I
one's
left it
gonna
up
vote
here on
for
the
them.
screen, we try and use it.
And then Rockland.
Right? So what happens is,
either
as we
Eham
scroll
or
down through it,
BJ
you can see each
are
of the
able to
names,
vote for Rockland.
and we get green check marks as we go through for anybody that acknowledges that's there. What it will save you is one extra, two extra, or sometimes three
Only
extra
one of them.
emails of, we need to know if we're gonna have a quorum for the council, especially on these transfer of authorities or CON expansions or whatever it may be. So I will plead with you, I will bribe you, I will politely threaten you with a committee chair. All I ask is that, you know, let's try and use the Boardable app. It makes everybody's life a little bit easier.
David Jacobson's
To that end, welcome, Dr. Papish.
here even has Nancy.
I wanted to point out that you were here so that we were getting you on record. It is a way that we'll send agendas. It'll be the way that we share documents. It'll be the way that we can pass information. As an example, for those of you that were on the education meeting, there was a new policy statement that came out
That's it.
today.
Nobody else
And there was a
showed up.
reference to it. It's an easy way for us to be able to pass it to you and for you to be able to see it.
Yes.
So again, we're trying to use this format. It's free to us. It's coming down out of the state. Multiple other agencies or regions are using it. I'd just like to see us have an opportunity to be able to use it. Is there anyone that's had difficulty accessing theirs?
Glenn.
Because if you have,
And then one of
we can
them
get you
vote.
the email that's attached to it, or potentially get it changed. We don't have the ability to change that, I believe.
Votes for Nick.
But we can make
Oh, actually, vote
a
for
phone
Nick.
call to get that done, so that you guys have the ability to be able to get this information.
Dave,
Okay, it's a really easy way for that to be done.
just a question.
Tim Nitzel,
Yeah.
just, I gotta call out names, we're on the record.
Sorry.
And then one of these.
For those of us who
vote
are
for
not
Nick.
on the council per se, but are here as a job requirement, are we able to access that as well?
Stephanie's gonna vote. She's gonna vote.
We talked about that at the last
And
meeting.
that's it.
It's a great question.
So just notify out from so.
If you don't put me on board, well, I can't help extra.
No, I understand where you're coming from, that's a valid question. We will re-ask the question,
Okay.
okay? And there was another hand over here somewhere, as I went to Tim.
He answered what I was.
Tim got it? Okay. Yeah, we're gonna try and do it. We've got a couple of things on the agenda that may help with that a little bit, and we'll see if that helps as we get through the agenda here. Steve and/or Karen?
So I have a quick question for Sullivan County. I have Albie Bachman, Alex Rowe that can vote, their delegates, and out of your two alternates that are here, we just need one person. Is that gonna be Norman or Jeff? Okay, thank you.
There you go. Answer result. Okay, so again, I'm gonna take the two new businesses and move the transfers up. We're gonna turn it over to Glenn and his team for the transfer of authorities.
Okay, our Glenn Alvin, just so you have my record name. So our transportation committee met and looked at these transfers of ownership. We were coming here with a second in motion. I'll take the first one, which is the transfer of ownership of Brewster Southeast Joint Fire District to Brewster Southeast EMS. We received in the mail a certificate of competency saying that there's nothing that the state found that would bar them from doing this, for Michael Miller, Stephen Miller, Maurice DeSantis, and Donald Goodwin. So these are authorized, so we have a second in motion on the floor for these, to accept the transfer of ownership from Brewster Southeast Joint Fire Department to Brewster Southeast EMS.
Before I take a motion, I just want to read something into the record, please. The HVREMSCO is responsible under the Bureau of EMS Policy 0606 to complete a transfer of EMS operating authority under Article 30, Section 310, permits EMS services to transfer operating authority to a new owner or owners or operators following review of the competency and fitness of the new operator and approval of the appropriate HVREMSCO and Bureau of EMS. Under subsection 3, fitness and competency is one responsibility of the applicant process to ensure high quality of ownership and management of an ambulance service to the degree of attempting to identify any issues or character that would be detrimental to a highly professional service. With this as the purpose, the HVREMSCO shall address any issues relative to the competency and fitness of the applicant of officers of the corporation as prescribed in Public Health Law 3005, subsection 5. We are in receipt of letters from the Department of Health dated 2/20 finding that the applicants are fit and competent. The application and letter of support from the DOH was given to the Transportation Committee, and Glenn has now put a motion on the floor. So we'll need a second. The committee. Well, we need
It's
a,
already seconded. It's a second.
it's a second motion.
So, move
Right.
call.
So, well, before we go to the second call, are there any questions from the panel? Hearing none, I'll take David's motion to call. If we could
It's a
have
roll call, right?
Roll call.
It's a roll call.
Please. Yes, please.
So Dutchess County, David Violante,
Yes.
Joan Siebert,
Yes.
Anthony Singh.
Yes.
I should have read the call.
Orange County, Wayne Chang,
Yes.
David Grass,
Yes.
Israel Knobloch,
Yes.
Nancy Pfeiffer,
Yes.
Putnam County, Robert Cuomo,
Yes.
Steve Wygan, yes. Mike Mikulski,
Yes.
Rockland County, Bernice Durati,
Yes.
Tim Egan,
Yes.
Glenn Alvin,
Yes.
Ephraim Tober,
Yes.
and VJ Leiter.
Yes.
Sullivan County, Albie Bachman,
Yes.
Alex Rao,
Yes.
Norman Prentice,
Yes.
and Jeff Ashdown.
No, he doesn't vote.
Oh, sorry. No? Hang on a second.
Sorry.
My bad. Take that out. And Ulster County, Richard Parrish,
Yes.
Kelly Nelson.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Okay. And motion passes.
All right, moving on, we have a second motion to discuss tonight. It's the second motion to accept the transfer ownership from Mobile Life Support Services to Empress Ambulance Services. Again, we received a fitness of competency from the state saying that they've looked at all the officers of the various, of that agency and find nothing to bar them from doing that. The committee met and are recommending that the transfer of ownership to Mobile Life Support Services, from Mobile Life Support Services to Empress Ambulance Service be done. So again, this is a seconded motion.
Okay, and I should have read this on the last one, so I will come back into it. As per the Hudson Valley Regional EMS Council bylaws, Article B, conflict of interest, the following is there. No officer or member of the council may vote or matter in which he or she has pecuniary interest. When an officer or member of the council is uncertain as to whether a conflict exists, he or she shall disclose the matter to the full council, which shall decide whether a conflict of interest exists. Is there anybody that wants to declare a conflict of interest on this matter? Mr. Cuomo, you're going to
What's
declare
your
a conflict of
What's
interest.
your conflict?
Do I have a conflict?
but I.
Okay, so you've declared one,
Okay.
right? It's now up to the council to decide whether you actually have one or not.
Okay. I'm an employee of Empress, but I'm not a principal supervisor or,
You're not an owner, is what you're
I'm
saying.
not an owner,
You don't,
yes.
you don't receive,
I'm a- right.
you receive compensation, but not necessarily, as an owner or getting a dividend or stock options or anything.
Right,
okay.
right. I just get a paycheck.
Right. Well,
Mr. Bachman?
Albie Bachman. I'm a consultant for Empress EMS.
Okay.
I'm not an owner. I get compensation, and I'm the best-looking paramedic they have.
Well, that's a big compliment.
Is there anyone else?
I don't think we need to vote now after hearing that.
Well, I'm going to declare a conflict of interest, right? As I as well was a former employee of Mobile Life, as well as a current employee of Empress. So that will be up to the council now to decide whether the three individuals that have declared a conflict have a conflict of interest and whether they should vote or not. And now you can put a motion on the floor, second it, we'll go to a meeting and then go from there.
I would move that none of them have conflicts based on their status.
Okay, so that's a motion. Norman Tim Egan made the motion. Again, just say your name before you make the motions or second them. Norm
Prentice, second.
seconds it. Any discussion on the matter?
Do they feel uncomfortable
And
voting?
you can ask the question, as long as you state your name
Oh,
first.
sorry, yeah.
Bachman, no.
I don't feel uncomfortable.
As the council president, I'm going to abstain anyway, just because I think it's in the best interest of the council.
Anthony Tang, has either of the three individuals been part of the submission of the transfer of ownership? Okay.
I have not. But I'm not going.
Do we still have quorum if their vote is not
Yes.
counted?
Yes, we do.
Okay. So if there's unanimous, it wouldn't change the outcome if you're out, if you don't vote or not?
Correct. Any other comments? Hearing none, we'll take a show of hands to allow both Mr. Bachman and Mr. Cuomo to participate in the vote for the transfer authority. Show of hands, everybody in the air. Okay, those that are against, those abstaining. That would be me. Okay, so the motion passes allowing them to vote on the transfer of authority. Okay? Thank you. If you can go ahead and,
roll call vote.
please, thank you.
So, who seconded?
It's a second.
It's a second motion
Second
from the
motion.
committee.
Yeah, gotcha.
All right, Dutchess County, Dave Violante.
Yes.
Joan Siebert.
Yes.
Anthony Sang.
Yes.
Orange County, Wayne Chen.
Yes.
Dave Grass.
Abstain?
Israel Knobloch.
Yes.
Nancy Pfeiffer.
Yes.
Putnam County, Robert Cuomo.
Yes.
Steve Wygan, yes. Mike Mikowski.
Yes.
Rockland County, Bernice Goretti. Tim Egan.
Yes.
Glenn Alvin.
Yes.
Ephraim Tover.
Yes.
BJ was in there, right? We did. Yeah, BJ Leiter.
Yes.
Make sure I wasn't crossing off the wrong one. Albie Bachman, Sullivan County.
Yes.
Alex Rao.
Yes.
Ulster County, Richard Parrish.
Yes.
Kelly Nelson.
Yes.
He told me to take one out. Oh, sorry, Norman Prentice, sorry.
Yes.
Okay. And Jeff. Right, no, that's everything. Jeff was the one I took off. Okay. Good,
Motion passes?
motion passed.
Very good, thank you. I do appreciate it. Now I'm gonna have to just back up for a half a second. Reading the conflict of interest, is there anyone in this room that felt that anyone had a conflict of interest that voted on the previous transfer of authority from Brewster? seeing none. One more time. Does anyone feel that there was a conflict of interest in the previous vote? That's twice. One more time. Does anyone feel that there was a conflict of interest? Hearing none, the transfer authority stands as passing through the authority. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, you're very welcome.
Have a nice holiday, everybody.
Have a great holiday. Thank you for coming out. Okay, hopefully everybody through Boardable got a chance to look at the previous minutes. I'm looking for a motion to accept, amend, delete the
Motion to accept.
September 20th. I have a motion from Rich Parrish and seconded from Joan Siebert. Still need the names because when we type up our minutes, I have been reprimanded on, we're not sure who made the motion, who seconded it, so I'm trying to get back into a little more quorum here, so I apologize.
Who made the motion?
Mr. Parrish
Who seconded?
and Ms. Siebert.
Thank you.
Okay? Any questions, comments, concerns? All those in favor, raise a hand. Those against? Anybody abstaining? Outstanding. Mr. Parrish, Vice President's report, sir.
All right. Been attending quite a few meetings. The Lower Hudson Valley HEPIC meeting was last week. Bill was there, and I was like, did you stick around for the tabletop? No. Yeah. They split us up. I got stuck on one of the tabletops on infection control, and it was interesting when they got to the point where they were going to start evacuating the hospital because they were overloaded with infectious patients. The discussion about the status of EMS came up, so it was a good discussion, and those people have no clue what's going on with EMS. And attended the RTAC meeting, which is the Regional Trauma Advisory Committee, and Frank Casanati, right? Is that close enough? Casanati did a presentation on the I-84 incident, and what came up out of there was that they had issues of finding out what the hospital's capacity was, and they had no idea what the MACE team was, and I sat there and didn't say anything, but Dr. Larson,
Just tell them what MACE stands for.
the hospital, it's the Lower Hospital Mutual Aid Coordinating Entity, and there's, all 31 hospitals in the region have signed on to share resources, and there's always two people on duty. One will go to the scene of the incident, and the other will make all the phone calls and, hey, have a bus crash, how many patients can you take, that type of stuff, and they feed it back to the incident commander. Right? And so Dr. Larson gave a presentation on it, and now they voiced an interest in it, so one of these days they'll get to him or I to do a presentation on that. Right? Then at the state EMS, I sit on both the safety committee and the training and ed committee, and they formed a new tag, a technical assistance committee for emergency management EMS. And this came out of the major snowstorms they had last year, that EMS needs some guidance on how to do emergency management. So we put a tag together on that. So I'll be sitting on that. As far as at the region, as the vice president, I'm ex officio of all the committees, so I sat on the transportation committee, worked with Glenn on that. The public information committee, we're still looking for a chair on that, I cannot be the chair. And on the protocol committee.
Any questions for Rich? Outstanding. President's report, no, maybe I don't have it.
Left yours on the printer too?
No, I actually brought it up, only because I had to email it to Steve. Okay, so just a couple of things that I wanted to kind of bring up. One I've already kind of beat up pretty hard, the Boardable initiative. But what we do want to make sure is that everybody has an opportunity to be on a committee, or a tag, or a special assignment. The only way that this council functions is when we work together as a team. And it's pretty amazing what everybody can accomplish when we get a bunch of people working on it. It doesn't take 2 or 3 individuals, because I'm sure as your organizations, when you're the individual that's doing the only task, it's daunting. And it's seems like an unpassable hill. So if we just work together, get a bunch of people on it, they're fairly quick. Again, 3 committee meetings today. A lot gets done inside those. So I would encourage you to work on them and become part of it. The Boardable, again, do you guys feel that this is working? Is it not working? Are we going up the wrong tree? We really need some feedback. It's a tool that allows us to be able to share information quickly, and it goes back and forth. Individuals can upload stuff into there for discussion. So if you have information that you want to share or information that you want to throw into a discussion, that all can be shared up when it's going through it. As Rich just said, as far as a recruitment tag, I was kind of hoping to get some kind of lead and information as to where that committee is going, what their thought processes are, because there was a lot of people interested, and then what, from my understanding, everybody had life get in the way and didn't have an opportunity to jump on the meetings. So this will be the rallying cry yet again to please, get onto it. Again, we need the experience that sits in this room to be in there and participate inside it. When I will lose track of the number of years of experience if we tried to count it inside this room right now. So let's forge the way. Let's be the cutting edge of what we can do is falling through there. For those of you that didn't have an opportunity to see the state meetings, and you probably didn't because if you weren't there, I found out today that they haven't been uploaded yet to the state's website. I guess they're working on why they haven't been. But there was a interesting conversation that came out of the financial side of it. And that was that there is funding available through the Economic Development Councils for EMS. So when Bill and I did a little bit of research and started looking at the economic councils, we realized that the Hudson Valley, all 6 of our counties, and Westchester make up District 8 of the economic councils. I reached out via email to the Westchester Council President, looking to see if there's interest in moving through that. If they are, because we need them to be on board to move forward with it, what we'll be looking to do is, again, put a tag together that will sit and look at what kind of funding opportunities can we get to maybe work on the tag for recruitment and retention and addressing some of that. So again, it's just another funding avenue that's potentially out there, but I need people that can run it down and then go to there. In discussions, talking to some of the other councils that go across the state and looking at HVREMSCO, we realize that we may be missing some opportunities here inside this council. So what I would like to do is put out for discussion the potential for amending our bylaws to add 2 voting seats to the council that would be appointed by the council, but they would have to be a public entity. So potentially an individual from a hospital could in fact, public hospital sector, elected officials. I just think that if we can infuse some diversity into our committee here, it only helps by getting a different perspective of what we do, right? If we're only EMS people looking at it from an EMS angle, could somebody from the outside give us perspective of something that we're either missing or not evaluating? And that's open to discussion of what you guys think. So go. Anthony.
A lot there. I want to apologize that I didn't realize Boardable was going to be the main focus, so if I hadn't answered anything on Boardable, I do apologize for that. I didn't...
No demerits have been issued yet, so no need to apologize.
I mean, you can fire me if you want.
Trust me, you're going to be president before you get fired.
So like, I know when I first got alerts about, are you interested in this? Are you interested in that? Right? And I'm suddenly getting like notifications, emails that, hey, this person said yes, this person said yes. And I was like, what is this thing? So I said yes. But I mean, you know, I didn't get anything, I didn't see anything beyond that. And if there were meetings that I missed, I do apologize for that as well. I didn't
Okay.
realize there were meetings.
Again, no need to apologize.
The Economic Development Council, you know, I'm more than willing to help out with that.
Okay.
So, you know, I just wanna,
So let's circle back after the meeting and either approach Karen or Rich Parrish if you're interested in serving on that committee. Jeff Ashdown had expressed interest of getting on a committee. What we can do is show you the spreadsheet of where some of the committees are a little short on personnel, and we would encourage you to start there. But again, we never turn people away that are willing to participate through there. All we're looking for is participation.
and the expanding the 2 seats to allow, is it those 2 seats specifically to allow hospitals to sit on?
Nope.
Or
Again, my thought process was, you know, the examples that I put in there, and again, I didn't scroll down here. You know, my thought was, you know, maybe somebody from a hospital, somebody from the community, maybe it's an accountant, maybe it's, you know, somebody from a different professional service.
Because
I just wanted to toss you out, because if you look at HVREMSCO, right,
yeah,
several of the members that are voting members on HVREMSCO are not part of the EMS. They could very well be part of hospital-based, or they could very well be, you know, somebody from the at-large public. I just, again, looking at, is that something that makes sense to infuse here?
so my counter would be, you know, maybe not so much hospital, because but maybe someone from the House of Representatives or something like that, you know. I think, you know, they're the ones that are able to generate funds and address problems. And I've seen models where, you know, they're invited to some of these meetings, not EMS specifically, but in other organizations, you know, and then they go back and they report to the person, you know, some staffer comes in and they report back to the person that they work for, and then, you know, things could be introduced into the legislature to help, right? So,
Great
you know,
idea.
yeah, maybe not so much the hospitals, but somebody, you know, maybe somebody from either federal or state, whatever you think may be worth.
It's not what I think, ladies and gentlemen, it's what we think. And that's kind of where I went. Rich?
Along those lines, there should be somebody from the business community to get business expertise.
My job is to spark the conversation. What do you guys think? Mr. Bachman?
Not only, oh, she's gone. Not only business, but I get approached from many community members that have questions about what we do, why we do, and why we have not done. So I'm just wondering if we get applications from people and have community people's interests in what we do and the way that they look at what we do and how to improve it. Community members, I think that we should look at more than business, more than hospital. We have a doctor that's here, he can represent the hospital.
Sure.
We have people that are attached to the hospital. Our vice president works in the hospital for eons. Community
Used
members
to, retired.
are not getting, right behind you, brother. Community members are asking me questions about.
Okay.
Just a thought.
Other thoughts?
I concur with Albie. I think you're right. I think we need to get folks from the community. And remember, these seats are gonna be voting seats.
If that's what the council decides, that would be my recommendation, because if they don't have a vested interest, why would they attend?
Yeah, but so everybody else does have a voice though, right?
Sure.
So people will have a voice to influence the vote of the council at large. So I agree. I think it's a great idea, fantastic idea.
What about people like from the Chamber of Commerce or something along those lines, some other other organizations that are business, be part of?
That's a good idea.
They would then be, maybe you rotating seats among the various counties.
Yeah.
Because every county has a Chamber of Commerce or something along those lines. So maybe, 1 year it's Rockland, next year it's Orange, next year it's Dutch, you could rotate them in and get the perspectives from there. And
Sure.
maybe among them, they might say, okay, maybe we can meet as a little subcommittee and have things that would give you fuel for thought. Maybe, they could send that through that county's representative would, have had a meeting among the Chamber of Commerces and say, okay, this is what we discussed, and he can bring it forward to us and say, hey, well, are we gonna go forward with this and stuff like that. Yeah, the more viewpoints you get in the room, the better off you are. You know, that's important, so.
Anyone else? Mr. Egan?
I like the idea of local government leaders being involved. The only concern I have there, well, and as we start to advance the idea and the concept of EMS as an essential service, I mean, we've been having more and more conversation and discussion about that. The people that are gonna be left holding the bag are local government, whether it be county, town, or villages. The problem that I see is that local government leaders tend to be very parochial in their thinking, and they tend to, well, let's just leave it there. I mean, there could be some issues with that, but they may not think globally in terms of what's best for EMS. They may think only locally in terms of what's best for my community.
Sure.
But then again, I mean, you know, the critique that's been made about regional councils in general is that it's a bunch of EMS industry leaders voting on their own applications. So, you know, to bring in people from the outside, I do think it's a good idea. And, you know, Glenn, you mentioned Chamber of Commerce. That's made of, the chambers are made up of local business leaders.
Right.
They're made up of business owners, sometimes banks, but usually small businesses. At least that's what I've seen.
Right.
But local elected officials, especially if you get into maybe higher level, like county execs, I think that's a great idea.
Anthony?
Yeah, I mean, and that's why, I mean, I start from the top of the feds, but I mean, you know, state, you know, we know the jurisdictions of the assembly people and the state senate, right? So, you know, there's already a pool of people that could be invited to take up that seat, right? I also think we should be judicious about who is eligible for the seat. I know, I mean, I agree that, you know, with different minds, maybe come up with different ideas that, you know, but, you know, committee to member, I think, is vague enough where anybody can just sit on there, and we kinda don't want that. We kinda do want it to be a little more targeted, you know?
Okay.
So, I mean, you know, yeah.
You're on.
Perhaps we can look for members of the community in whatever capacity that have expertise in our areas of weakness, whether it's recruitment or finance or whatever it may be, and try to recruit someone for those seats that can fill those voids.
So, anybody else? Wayne?
Before we do that, we have to educate these people, bring them up to speed on what we do. As for instance, my town supervisor came to me and said, in Orange County, all the town supervisors are getting together with the county executive, talking about what they're gonna do for EMS, but there are no EMS people there. So it's a good idea to bring them in to us, but we have to bring them up to speed on what we do and why we do what we do, so they understand what we're looking for.
Okay, so is there anybody else? Because I don't want to shortchange anybody. All right, so it sounds like there's interest in exploring this. So what I'm going to do, sorry Albie, is we're going to task the bylaws committee with putting a subgroup together to review the suggestions. What I'm going to ask everybody in the room to do is take a minute and email Albie, or if you want, to Karen, and she will forward it off to their committee. Put a subcommittee of the bylaws committee together, put all the suggestions together, and bring back at our next council meeting a recommendation of here's where it's leaning, so that we can give them some guidance of where to go if we're going to do a bylaw change.
Thank you, guys.
Chief, thanks.
We appreciate your involvement.
Do I hear a resignation from the seat? Again, my goal was to do exactly what we did tonight. Spark the conversation. Have a discussion. Could very well be that we beat this up for 2 meetings and come back and say that was a really great idea, but it's not going to work. And I'm okay with that. But we made a decision as a team, and we shot every possibility across the board to see whether it had some merit or not. Fair enough? Outstanding. So, in the spirit of creating committees and tags, one of the things that we have to do as part of the council for the program agency is the executive committee has to review the financials so that when we get our audits back, we can sign off on them saying that they in fact are true and have been reviewed. To do that, the federal government has reminded us that each of the executive committee members, which makes up the chairs of each committee, plus the president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer, have to sign a conflict of interest form, which says that they have no conflict of interest by reviewing that. In typical bureaucratic fashion, we need a committee to review the executive committee that assures that there is no conflict of interest. So we need a checker to check the checkers to check the check. So, I don't make this up, I just follow the language in the things that come up. So what I'd like for you to do, for those of you that are looking for a new committee, right? Once a year, after all of the executive members sign their conflict of interest disclosure that they don't have one, I need someone to review those and confirm that there's no conflict of interest in the executive committee for reviewing the budget that the auditors did. So, if you're interested in that, please see Mr. Parrish after the meeting. He will put that together so that we have a committee to check a committee. A committee to check a committee to check an auditor.
And you know why they did that? Because somewhere, someone did not.
That's my report unless somebody has any questions. That was a mouthful, hearing none. Okay, treasurer's report, Mr. Chan. Because we have to check the checkers.
We wrote 28 checks for a total of $76,792.66. Most of it went to rent, health, miscellaneous payments. We did transfers, 2 transfers, one for $23,000 on October 4th, one for $30,000, December 6th, from account to payroll. Our financials are, we made 4 deposits for $18,213.70. Vouchers, 4th quarter for program agency was submitted on 6/30/23. Voucher for $61,647.18 has been paid as of 12/20, but has not been entered, has not been entered in SMS for payment. Regional Council, 4th quarter, submitted on 6/30/23, voucher for $6,946.30, was paid on 9/15. 1st quarter, from 9/30/2023, voucher for $4,913.10, was paid on 12/6. Training and education, the voucher for $6,300 was paid on 9/1. The voucher for another CIU class, voucher for $506 was paid on 12/20/23. Okay, the last voucher, Bill's working with, payment should be within 30 days. The voucher was delayed because of contract approval. 1st quarter, 9/30/2023 voucher for $64,576.84 has been paid as of 12/20, has not been entered into SFS. As of 12/11, Bill's working with Sharon from Bemis to get that moving forward and we get payment. So, the bottom line is we have, in all of our accounts, $125,911.90. That's it.
Thank you very much. I'll take a motion to accept the treasurer's report.
Motion, Anthony.
Anthony Tadang, thank you. Second? Joan Seibert. Any discussion? Nope. Does anybody want to check the report? Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstaining? Motion pass. Bill, regional office staff report, please.
Okay. December 4th, 5th, and 6th was the HVREMSCO meeting in Troy. Unfortunately, the Medical Standards Committee and the CMAC Committee were unable to meet due to a lack of quorum. So it kind of didn't cut anything short, it just made things confusing. I'm sure all the topics of that, I'm sure Dave will go over when he goes into his meeting. The general finance. I wouldn't touch that one. I don't want to step on that one. The general financial picture is pretty good. The state does owe us $126,000, but we expect that to be paid very shortly. I had a conversation earlier today with Shannon, and hopefully it'll be done soon. The current
Did you say 126,000?
126,742.
Checks in the mail, don't worry, guys.
The current regional contract, regional council contract and program agency contract expires on 6/30/2024. We've had two-year contracts, so 2 years is up. We're starting to negotiate on a new one, 7/4/24 to 6/30/25. Hopefully, we'll have that done before 6/30, so that we can just roll into a new contract. But unfortunately, the contract, the budget, and the vouchering system, which is currently done in Grants Gateway, which we just learned it all at Grants Gateway, we learned how it worked and how to get around it and everything, is now being transferred to the SFS system, which is the state financial system. So we're gonna be doing it completely different. No one knows how to do it yet. There is a transition course that I have to take to try to figure out how to do it. So hopefully we'll get that in place soon. With the CMAC and the HVREMSCO not meeting, there was a little twist to the problem here with the protocol changes. The collaborative protocols at the last couple of meetings have decided that they were gonna only change protocols once a year, so that it didn't confuse a lot of people, and you know, it was easily done, and January was gonna be the date. So it was gonna be voted on in the December meeting, January 1st it was gonna go into play, and then you had a couple of months to get all the training done and everything. That didn't happen because there was no CMAC meeting. So Dr. Doinauer, in talking at the council meeting, who is the chair of the CMAC, said that they should be able to catch up to that and be very close to that June deadline for implementation with education, I think. So we'll see with that one. The Bureau of EMS, as they said today, published a new MOLST policy, but there was two other policies that were also published in this time. One was the intern policy on the use of face masks in EMS. It basically goes back to whatever the federal government says is what the state is agreeing with. And the provisional trauma center designation process, more for hospitals to become a trauma center. HCS is still a problem. We can't get it out to the agencies, so if anybody has a problem with cards, they can come to us, we can look them up.
Just call Karen.
Or we can print them if that's necessary. So if you have somebody that has that issue, let us know. Today we did two TOAs that was presented by the Transportation Committee. We also, on January 8th, we have an expansion of territory, which the January 8th is actually the public hearing for the expansion of territory. All the mailings have been done, all of the newspaper ads have been out, so now we're just going to wait for the public hearing on the 8th. And
Full council vote on the 20th, right?
it's the February 21st. Yes, will be the full council vote that we'll need to do. We'll have a seconded motion coming out of the Transportation Committee one way or another, and they'll have all of the information available to us. Spring Hill Ambulance in Rockland County is getting ready to start as an ALS service. I haven't heard from them yet, but January of '24 was the initial date. Also, Kingston Fire is scheduled to go ALS sometime in January of '24 also. In the last REMAC meeting, Beacon Volunteer Ambulance was upgraded to an AEMT level of service, which is our second AEMT level that we have throughout the region now. Port Jervis is one, and Beacon will be the second. IGEL is a project we've been working on for a while. But it's actually getting a little bit better. We have 140 agencies statewide participating. 89 of them have their entire staff trained. We have over 1,000 providers trained on how to use IGEL and have been successful with them. We've had approximately 153 insertions as of this morning. So it seems to be working fairly well at the BLS level. If that does go through as a pilot, it could change the scope of practice on the BLS level. That was the intent for being a BLS level to be able to use supraglottic airways. Portable, we know about that. The next state meeting is February 6th and 7th. And our next REMAC meeting happens to be January 8th, so in the morning is the January 8th is the REMAC meeting, and then in the afternoon is the public hearing. Our next HVREMSCO meeting is going to be February 21st. And RTAC hasn't announced when the next meeting is going to be. That's all that I have, sir.
Any questions for Bill? Beautiful, hearing none. Jeff, do you have Jeff's report?
No, it was just mostly on the IGEL would have been what we would have been talking about. That and we have a new QA/QI manual out that all the agencies should be looking at and should be referring to and getting familiar with. And there's going to be some stuff that Dave's going to talk about that's going to be involved in that.
Beautiful, thank you. Well, that'll transition us right over to the training committee.
Perfecto. This upcoming year, we're looking at doing a CLI course in the spring, an instructor update in the spring, and a moulage class region-wide in the spring also. And so the last CLI class we had was it was really very well attended, and folks liked the format of it, so we're going to continue doing that. The state's happy with that, and we have been pushing the state to make it a little bit faster, cleaner, easier for CLI candidates to move through the system, and we'll continue working on those things. Unless there's any questions for training ed.
Outstanding, hearing none. Dr. Papish.
So the good news for all of you is we touched on most of what I was going to mention already.
Outstanding.
Save some of your vital time. So the last REMAC meeting was on November 6th, and just to sum up the salient items, we talked about IGEL. The one problem with the IGEL is there was a lack of data flowing up about, at the time, we only had 60 to 70 insertions, so the fact that we now have 150 means people are submitting their data, which is great. I don't know if any of you used IGELs, but they're a game changer, I think. I mean, they're really like a great airway. They're so easy to put in. They're reliable. I have a feeling that, like, at some point, it's not only going to change the BLS sort of operations nationwide, but perhaps the ALS one as well, in the sense that there's a decreased emphasis on intubation in general, pre-hospitally, and there's a lot of data regarding that. And this is really easy, safe, works really well, as long as people know how to use it. So, I'm pretty excited about it. So the big push was the data, getting the data. What else did we talk about? The beacon upgrading, that vote happened. We talked about the discussion of the MCI that happened on 84, as well as the one in Wappingers. That was actually came out of the helicopter committee report, where we were talking about the use of the helicopter during the MCI was really well done, and there were multiple helicopter agencies involved in it. Overall, both of them went very well given the challenges. We talked about the MACE team. Dr. Larson gave a presentation. And then from the RTAC, there was a discussion about, Dr. Larson gave the report from the RTAC meeting about pediatric trauma centers, as specifically during the RTAC meeting, talking about how they really do save radiation exposure for children, in the sense that the traditional hospital, when you have a pediatric trauma, historically pan scans, when it's a major trauma patient, they just scan everything, which is great because it gives you all the information about what's wrong, but at a significant cost of radiation, which for adults really isn't as terrible, but for children, we're now seeing the ramifications of pan scanning people from the 90s as these children now are getting cancer. So it's pretty significant. And the benefit of the pediatric trauma center is they really are very selective in who they choose to and how they image people. So there was that. There are new brain trauma guidelines that came out, and as part of the conversation, most of the new guidelines we're already doing and been following. Westchester volunteered that they're going through the brain trauma guidelines themselves and seeing if there's any areas that can be implemented that we're not already doing, and we're going to piggyback on whatever they find. No need to recreate the wheel. Talked about the new revised QA manual, and from the protocol committee, we talked about the RSI protocols are currently being reviewed, both the training and how we actually perform RSI. That's kind of an ongoing thing. The medication shortages, we were waiting CMAC for guidance. I don't know if since there's no quorum, there's no guidance. There's no guidance and there's no medications being used. Also, they're working on an approved list of alternate airway devices for the region. Our protocol updates, we talked about that. We had a conversation about push dose pressors, which I think is really interesting, and that's going to probably come down the line, be part of our region at some point soon. Push dose pressors are basically giving either epi or phenylephrine or some type of vasoconstrictive agent at the time that RSI is being done. Because what happens not uncommonly is you have a hemodynamically unstable person that needs to be intubated, and when you give the RSI medications, they lose all their motor tone in their blood vessels, and you have hemodynamic collapse. And so it's a common way that people die around intubation. And push dose pressors, which is instead of, these medications are traditionally given in IV drips, IV infusions, is basically having a syringe filled with a small amount of epi in the order of micrograms, 10 to 20 micrograms per push, and pushing it and bringing the patient's pressure up transiently so you can do the procedure without causing them to crash. And so this is being done in New York City, it's being done in other places, it's done in hospitals routinely. And so bringing that out into the field is, so we had a discussion about it, and I think the conclusion was we're going to talk about it at the next meeting as far as which agent we would ideally like to use, how we'd like to use it, and come out with some type of a protocol for assisting RSI. So that was the most interesting medical part of the REMAC meeting. Health Alliance and the Level 3 Trauma Center, we touched on. The helicopters are now carrying whole blood. It's another change that's happened. And then the last thing we talked about, which I think most of you guys have heard about, was that movie, Honorable But Broken. If anybody hasn't seen it, if you've heard about it, you should go see it. I saw it. It's really good. And that was the REMAC meeting.
Thank you, outstanding. Any questions for Dr. Papish? All right, thank you, sir. Mr. Alvin, do you have anything else for council?
Nothing else other than what I know Bill said we had a couple things coming down the pipe, but obviously that public hearing on the 8th of January, which will then have the transcript, and we'll have the big vote at the council meeting on the 21st. So we need to definitely have a quorum at that meeting in order to vote for the...
And an easy way to let us know you're having a quorum is through?
Waterable.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
You got the message. I love it.
You got the message. If I can get that right across there, All right, outstanding. Again, for those of you that didn't notice on the agenda, because I left it up there in big bold print, we're still looking for a chair for both the Public Information and Education as well as Policy and Procedure Committee. So if you're interested, please see Mr. Parrish. He'll be happy to get you pushed onto that. And now we'll turn it over to Mr. Bachman, Legislative and Bylaws, sir.
Okay, the very first thing on our agenda here is to finally finalize a bylaw change to our bylaws. And we passed out what it is to you in section 6B, required. What I'll do is I'll read the present bylaw, and then I'll explain to you the proposed. Each member shall be entitled to cast one vote. No absentee or proxy vote shall be honored. A majority of votes cast shall be required to decide any issue unless specifically stated otherwise in the bylaw. Proposed by law. Each member shall be entitled to cast one vote. No absentee or proxy vote shall be honored. And here is the change. The affirmative vote of a majority of those members present shall be required to carry the motion of any item brought before the regional council. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe this would be a final reading.
Don't believe this was right at the last meeting.
No,
It was
not.
proposed. So this would be the reading.
This would be the first.
Any comments for it? And then if there's no comments, we can vote on it in February for the change.
Right.
So, you have anything to add to it, Al? Or-
No, sir.
Okay, any questions, comments, concerns, thoughts? I'll add just a little bit for those of you that weren't in the room when we discussed this. One of the things that we have noticed going up to the state for appeals has been the language in a lot of REMSCO's bylaws as far as what constituted a quorum. And to avoid us getting hauled up to Albany or Troy or wherever the meeting's being held, I wanted to nip that in the bud right quick so that our bylaws were clear about what constitutes a forum. And that was the impetus behind this request for the change. So, any other questions or concerns? Hearing none, this will be posted up on, go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, just a question. So this, Albie, this doesn't, if that's the impetus, I mean, this doesn't talk about a quorum. Is there more to this, or was this the specific section that needed changing?
Just that specific section. There's an A and a B. This was B.
Yeah, our quorum is clearly defined of what a quorum is. What was being challenged was, does the REMAC need a 51% of the eligible voters to constitute a quorum, or is it 51% of the voters present at the vote? And that was what was being challenged legally at state. And again, anybody that attends, David, Tim, Rich, Bill, correct me if I'm misstating that. Bob, you're there at each one of them. That was what's being challenged. So we wanted to clean the language up that clearly delineated that for our council, it's 51% of the eligible members voting
Present at the meeting.
that are present at the meeting, not 51% of all eligible voters of the council.
That could change the outcome of a vote.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So that was the impetus. We were just trying to clean our language up so that, you know, we don't have to worry about any Article 78s on that point. Any other questions? All right, if not, we'll get this scanned into Boardable. It'll be up and posted, and we will bring this back up in the February meeting for a final vote of the council.
Okay.
Okay?
I have 3 other things to discuss.
Please, sir.
Absolutely. I am honored to say that our illustrious governor has finally signed into law the direct pay legislation. That's something that many groups have been involved in, the Onion Group, the FARA, our fire agencies. I have to commend Tim Egan for his heavy work through Onion to push this. This has been going on for a couple of years. Each time that we go up to Albany for Lobby Day, we've been doing this for years. And finally, with Tim's push and the other organizations involved, we finally have direct pay. Unfortunately, it's not going to take effect until the month of January in 2025. But at least we have some movement, and I'm happy to see that.
That was since 2009, by the way.
That we've been pushing that.
We've been fighting this.
You know something? So finally, the governor has done that. Number 2, Medicare will no longer be paying for the treat-in-place, or RMAs, that we've been hoping for. It's time now for us to speak to our local legislators, and on Lobby Day, that's going to be another thing that we're going to push. Thirdly, just to come back to the conversation we had about the subcommittee that the president is so nice to turn over to Tim and myself. Thank you very much. You just lost a friend. About having our representatives on that committee. And Tim's point was quite interesting. Here we were talking about at our last meeting to have a legislative breakfast. And if I remember correctly, it was approved for us to move forward in planning. I believe that would be the proper place to have our legislators educated and put forth some of the things that we're looking for EMS to do in our region. So if we're gonna have legislators on this new committee that's being formed, I don't know if we should be wasting our time. But I think having all of our legislators in one room, we had a very successful legislative breakfast many years ago. And now that we have a new legislature, Assembly's changed, the Senate's changed, give them a few months to settle in. And early spring, I think, would be a good idea to put this legislative breakfast in front of us. I have the original documents that we did, the presentations that we did. I have no issue of putting it back together again with the help of Tim and a legislative breakfast committee. But I think that would be the more appropriate place to have the legislators listen to what we want and what we need and what we should have.
Excellent.
All right, so if it's okay with everybody, I'll move forward with that planning.
Quick question, Albie.
Sir.
Would you want to be timing that for the budget cycle? You know, she presents her state of the budget in January usually, right? I don't know, somewhere in the middle, but that's already.
Yeah, and then what is it, gets voted on in April?
Right, so I'm wondering, you know, if our needs need to be known to those legislators, are we trying to influence them and say, hey, this is, you know, we want to see this in, you know, the governor's budget, but if she doesn't put it in, can you guys put that in?
So I'll respond to that. So the governor's executive budget is due out in a few weeks.
Right.
And that'll be the first hint as to
What she
where the
wants.
legislature might be, at the very least, debating our issues based on what's in her budget next month. So that, I think, would be a good time, sometime between then and the end of March, because then, as Albie pointed out, it has to get voted on soon thereafter.
Right.
And that's when the debate will be shaped, and then we'll be able to get them to weigh in, or we'll be able to get them to listen to us rather, so that they can weigh in on our issues.
So you're thinking like a February, March type breakfast?
Yes, late
Okay.
February, early March, I
Okay.
would think would be the most effective.
Yeah, just timing it so they
We-
keep it in front of their head.
And I can tell you that we were just having a board discussion about this at Onion, about a lobby day, and for the very same reasons, we're looking at the timing of when that might be most appropriate.
Okay, makes sense.
I would also, if I may, very appreciably have seen Onion, Pasney, Nicevera, and all of the other groups work together with one voice. And I think that we need to take whatever topic that group has worked on and voice that moving forward, because one thing we found with direct pay is that it took everybody's unified voice, shocker, to get something done. And I think that we should have that same voice of the group and not a different voice, because then that would cause more problems.
So what I can tell you in response to that, and you may already be aware of this, is that while we were all up at State Council a few weeks ago, we took that opportunity to sit in a room. We sat in Sage,
Yeah.
up in Troy, and the Onion leadership, Nicevera leadership, FASNY leadership, and Chiefs.
Yeah.
And Ryan actually popped into the room, but we quickly tossed him out. Well, we let him say hi, and then we asked him. But we all got together and we had that conversation,
Yeah.
and really part of that conversation was, what is it that we want the executive to have in her executive budget? Well, you know, 2 years ago it was Part F, the last year it was Part S, this year it will be Part Q, or whatever it's gonna be. With regard to EMS as an essential service, and we had that conversation in great detail. And I can also tell you that a couple of weeks ago, I had the opportunity to speak with the governor with our Onion lobbyist about this. We got to thank her for direct pay. And she said to us, her unrequested comments with regard to EMS were that EMS has been underfunded and underrepresented for the past 10 years. That's what she said to us, and that means to me that she's definitely going to be doing something for us for a third year in a row. And you know, that's pretty significant. So the next night is when we sat down with FASB and she, we had already planned it, but we sat down with FASB and She's and NYSFERA to shape that legislative agenda, if you will, so that we were all on the same page with that. And EMS as an essential service is at the top of that agenda. But I alluded to this earlier in that one of the challenges that we're going to have is that, you know, one of the things that I've always said, even when it was discussed at CMAC and it never even made to the main body at HVREMSCO, what, 6 years ago maybe, something like that? I remember Dr. Cushman made a comment about this. Well, what does that exactly mean and how does that get tied to budget and funding? And it never went anywhere after that. At
For
HVREMSCO.
essential service.
For essential,
Yes.
correct, yes. Remember? That was Cushman.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yes.
And what we've been talking about is if we make EMS as essential service and there's mandatory funding from local government, whatever that means, you're going to have NISOC, you're going to go to the counties, you're going to have Association of Towns, and you're going to have NICOM pushing back on that because they represent village mayors, town supervisors, and county executives. And those people are going to say, hang on a second, you're not going to throw this monkey on our back and make us have to pay. So what we're doing and what we've already started talking about as that coalition, we even came up with a new letterhead, I think, we have it here somewhere. We started talking about how we're gonna have meetings with them to get them on board. Yeah, we put it together again.
Yep.
So we had a coalition between all of us, I don't know, many years ago, I'm gonna say 12, 13 years ago maybe. And we all met, in fact, in Troy in that auditorium that they have downstairs for the first time, quite a few years ago. And we were all on the same page with a lot of stuff, and then we kind of drifted apart and, you know, we did our own things. But we're now getting back together as a coalition to speak with one voice, and EMS as an essential service is at the top of our lists. So.
Excellent. So, not to be the Debbie Downer of the group, because I agree 100% with Albie that we need to have this legislative breakfast, but I also have to be the guy that signs the check.
Well, I was gonna ask, is there a budget associated
No.
with it?
I'm the guy that has to sign the check when we do all of this, and there is no budgeted item. So, what we are going to have to do between now and then is come up with a revenue stream, whether it's a donation, whether it's sponsorships, however it is, to figure out where that
Well, I think we'll
funding
figure it out.
to conduct that.
Yeah,
So, again, not trying to be a Debbie Downer, we'll support you wherever, we'll
There's someone
send the
that
letters
wanted
and mail the
me to
letters,
reach
but.
out.
And again, it could be as simple as, you know, we send a letter to each one of the membership councils that we ask to then send to the agencies, and, you know, if everybody throws in a couple $100, which is not an exorbitant, you know, that adds up to be able to secure the location and secure the food and make sure that we have the advertisement that we need to make sure it's successful.
We'll work on putting a budget together for that. We've done it
Again,
before.
hate to be Debbie Downer, but somebody's gotta sign the checks.
You know, I think I've seen you make omelets in the past.
I can't, my elbow.
So,
No, one more thing. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to co-chair Tim Egan to talk about community paramedicine.
so that was the one.
That was the one more thing, and also more on the essential service, if you will.
Well, interestingly enough, CP is the next thing on the agenda, but I'll.
Correct.
We'll pull that for a second. So there were a couple other pieces of legislation. Well, there was one other piece of legislation that people may not be aware of. I think those in hospitals are probably aware of it. It was the medical debt reporting bill. That does not allow anybody to send debtors to collection agencies anymore. And that was effective immediately. So keep that in mind if you have a medical practice and physicians in the room. Hospitals, ambulance services, doctor's offices, you can no longer send patients to collection agencies. That was effective immediately, but with regard to what Albie said earlier about direct pay, that is going into effect on January 1st of 2025. And we at Onion and NYSFERA and the rest of the agencies are really keeping a close eye on what the insurance industry is going to do over the next year. Because we're concerned about what they're going to do in terms of attacking what they're going to be paying. because the whole point was UCR was up here, Medicaid was down here, they wanted
Just
you to sign contracts.
For everybody,
here.
just the
Usual
initials.
and customary rate was
I
high,
know, but I wanna make
because
sure everybody
that
else
was
is
how
covered.
we made up the difference for all the agencies, especially the commercial services. And Medicaid is down here, and that's what the Fidelises of the world want you to sign a contract to do. Actually, you know a whole lot about this. Maybe you can speak to it if you'd like, but they wanted you to sign contracts, and then they would send you the check directly. But if you didn't sign a contract with them, well, then they would send the check to the patient. That was the whole premise behind the direct pay legislation. So what we're keeping an eye on now is what the insurance lobby is going to do about this, because they have a little over a year to gear up for this and to try and minimize the impact to them. So that's the challenge over the next 13 months or so, 12 and a half months.
To your point, and it's the one thing that nobody talks about, they have a year to get it repealed.
Well, that too.
So
That's
just
the
remember,
nuclear
that's
option
always
for that.
an option when EMS isn't paying attention.
That's when I
All of a
slip
sudden,
something
they
in.
repeal something, and it's like, wait a minute, you voted to do this. Hell, we
Who knows?
unvoted.
Maybe
We
they're going to
unvoted
promise the insurance lobby that that's what should happen. I don't know.
So it's important that this isn't
I'm not
just
cynic or anything.
a victory lap and then forgot about. It's important that it stays right as a topic.
Okay. CP, I mean, we all know that CP was signed into law, but only for those programs that were authorized under Executive Order 5, and that's a 2-year pilot, and then it expires. We still need CP legislation in the state, and that is also going to be one of our legislative priorities for the collective. I'll speak for it. That's definitely going to be one of our legislative priorities, to try and get CP legislation passed once and for all that is more meaningful than what was allowed with regard to executive orders.
Excellent. Any questions for Tim or Albie?
And Albie, the alternate payments for transport to alternate sites, is that gonna change?
It was, I think it was in committee, was it not? And in transportation committee, and it's sitting. No movement whatsoever. I did make a note, I think.
But till now, they were paying for alternate sites through COVID. Has that lapsed?
Well,
I don't have that, do you, Tim?
well, I believe that they will pay for alternate sites that have been approved by the Bureau. For example, and this is what I was just asking Bill about, that he didn't really understand what I was trying to say softly across the table. Crisis centers. So when I asked, well, there's gonna be a crisis center down in Orangeburg in Rockland County for psychiatric crises, if you will, for overdoses, for suicide threats, things of that nature. And it'll be an inpatient facility, I think would be the best way to describe it. And eventually EMS will be able to bring patients directly there from 911, but in the interim, what'll likely happen is that patients will be transported to the various hospitals, most likely Nye Hospital in our county. But one of the things that I asked Ryan a couple weeks ago was, well, do we have facility codes for them yet? He said that would be the one thing that we would absolutely need to do. They would put the facility codes in place, and then we'd have the updates. And speaking of updates, did we talk about Nexus 3.5? Would Bill, would Deborah speak?
Yeah, we were talking about these codes 2 years ago.
Calling that.
It's sitting.
Well, the facility codes are not constantly being updated, frequently being updated.
No, I'm talking payment.
Oh, you're talking about payment, it's all different.
So just to add on to that, and I don't want to take away from David's, the finance committee is definitely working their tails off to try and get more funding. I mean, they've been really successful over the course of the last 18 months. I mean, they took education funding and increased it dramatically. And that was much needed. It still hasn't met the threshold of cost, but it was still a significant increase. I mean, an EMT original went from $700 reimbursement, which is now at $950. And for the state to make that kind of move, that's significant. There has been discussions of a 28% increase into the program agencies. I can assure you, as sitting down doing the budget with Bill and Wayne and Rich, 28% would be a windfall. The things that we could do around here with a 28% increase would be phenomenal. What I'm not doing is counting the chickens before the eggs hatch, because that could go nowhere. And it could be that it comes through, who knows? So it'll be interesting to see where a lot of these financial situations end up. We can't complain. To Tim's point, I'll echo it. like the current administration, don't like the current administration. She has been very generous to EMS in the last 2 budget cycles. Very generous, and we have to be appreciative of it. Because I don't know too many agencies that don't take some form of funding to be able to support their systems.
Tim, to your point, Tom Smith, who's the CMO of the Office of Mental Health, spoke at Regional Council, and he talked about adding crisis centers throughout the state. And so.
Well, the previous SEMSCO meeting, there was a presentation from another woman from OMH about the crisis center. She had a
Right.
Right.
But he added to it.
He added to it.
He said he's gonna be there, right?
He's gonna be there at the council meetings now, yeah.
That's great.
Yep. And so I imagine that would further increase the ability to continue this process.
Anthony, you had something?
Yeah, I just wanted to react to the legislative breakfast. I think it's a great idea. I think those, when they're well organized, which it sounds like you guys are on the ball on that, we'll definitely deliver a message. The reason why I suggested that legislators could be also maybe members of the council is because they always got to be engaged early and often, right? Because not just like once a year or anything like that. Because when we talk about scheduling timing, the legislative calendar, you don't know when they get the opportunity to introduce something, right? So that's the reason why I brought it
No,
up.
I think that the perspectives that each of you bring to the table are well footed in foundation of a great point. But to move the council forward, that's what we need. We need those conversations to be had, to be willing to listen to your colleague across the table, have a different opinion, and then when we're all done, come to an agreement of how we should move forward. So again, I threw out hospitals and there was a little bit of pushback on that. I don't care who it is. What I'd like to see is someone that doesn't have some kind of initials that say EMS or an EMS derivative in front of or behind their names. So whether it's from the general public, Bob the Builder, I think that we have a great opportunity to infuse different opinions into our council and give some legitimacy to those naysayers that want to say you're all about yourself and how you're going to take care of yourself. No, we have voting members that are from the public that put their input and their knowledge and expertise into our council.
Yeah, once we put together an agenda for the legislative breakfast, we'll ship it out to everybody. And we've always said at our meetings that it's the responsibility of us as delegates to make a relationship, build a relationship with your local legislators, and talk to them in between certain things that we do.
That's right.
So when we put that agenda together, we'll make sure that you get a copy of it and you start pushing it for the breakfast.
And pre-COVID, we used to do lobby days every year, and we've gotten away from that. We are looking to do that again at Onion this year, but that's not where things get done. Where things get done are in the district offices. This time of year too, when the legislature's not in session, when they're in their districts, that's the time to meet with these people and get them educated about our issues in general, never mind our legislative priorities.
All right, outstanding. Anything else from either one of you gentlemen?
All done, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Outstanding report, and I appreciate your time and effort. Let's move on to State Council. Mr. Violante.
I will be as brief but thorough as possible.
Did you make a report?
I did send the report out, albeit a little bit late, I apologize. But hopefully everybody got it. I'm just gonna go through a couple of different things, and again, for those who are up at State Council, please, keep me honest with the things I'm saying, or things I may have remembered differently than how they actually occurred. From Finance Committee, they put out the workforce salary survey for 2023. There's a lot of good information in there. The hyperlink to the study and data with the links are going to be up on the state website. It is searchable now. I think it's on the one of the Buffalo websites. What they have found is that the number in EMS working is down by 17%, and many EMS workers indicated that they're considering leaving the field in the next few years. And so that number may continue to go down. I don't think it's because of education. I don't think it's because people necessarily don't want to do this kind of thing. I think it's because there's a lot of time constraints for volunteers, and the money is just not there otherwise. And if you're doing this on a commercial basis, or you're working for a commercial agency, you're doing this as your job. And so there's a lot of push to look at this being an essential service will absolutely help to that end, and looking at the variety of things on the back end of it that can make it something a little bit more for people to stay in, have benefits, and all the other kinds of things down the road, whether you're a volunteer, whether you're working for a commercial agency, municipal or otherwise. But those are some interesting numbers. A lot of folks initially said, oh, it's good, we have to improve the education. It's not that. Education is doing really well with all the things they're doing. We have to look at some other reasons why people are leaving what they're doing. We talked a little bit already about the state fiscal year 24-25 budget recommendations from the Finance Committee. They're looking for a 5% increase in training, 28% increase in program agencies, 11% increase in regional councils. And so those are fantastic. That also means that, especially for training and course reimbursement, make sure your vouchers are in. Make sure you're vouchering for folks that have taken classes. There's a lot of good pilot programs on there for folks that have joined an agency, have had to take an EMT class, they can get reimbursement from it. So look at those things. If you don't get the vouchers in, the state can't pay them, and if we leave money on the table, there's no reason to increase the budget. So make sure the vouchers are in and you're vouchering for costs for things that are happening. For anybody agency-wise that, if you remember around the COVID time, we got 80% funding on vouchers we put in, and then the state was going to pay the additional 20 down the road somewhere. If you haven't gotten that 20%, make sure you're vouchering that 20% to get that, so that you're not leaving money on the table for your agency. All right, so I don't know how that's worked for some agencies, so please make sure you're doing that. If you're not sure whether you have or haven't, reach out to the state. Problem with that is that the gal who really handles those things, Holly Proper-Platt, is taking on another job, and so she's not going to be there. But reach out and see what's going on with that. Make sure you get that extra 20% also.
Is there
not the extra 20%, but the 20% that's part of it?
I have a question. Is there a deadline for that Joris to put the voucher in for that extra 20% that you
You should do it as soon as feasibly possible.
That's what I was asking. Is it too late to do it?
No, do it. Absolutely do it. Right. Education and training. Mike Bogozzi is not in education and training, he's in another position, so now there's Drew, Kevin, Jean, and there's an open G18 position available. It looks like they're looking at resumes next week for that. There are 84 regional faculty across the state. We have a good number here in the Hudson Valley region. We're active. They mention the Hudson Valley region a lot up at State Council and the great things that we're doing, and I love hearing that. And so we are doing a lot of great stuff, so keep up the great work with that. Processing times are beginning to come down on a variety of things. If you're not sure how long something should take, look at the forms page on the state website. They'll give you processing times for everything from vouchers to testing to reimbursements to whatever happens to be. So take a look there. They related that there's not a lot of depth of institutional knowledge in the state education and training at the moment because a lot of people have left in succession. And so people that haven't been there long are moving up and learning the ropes as they go. That's not also necessarily bad, right? Sometimes you can get rid of some of the old guard ideas and put new ideas forward and they work. So we're trying to help support them a lot also. The vouchers are coming along. They believe they're somewhere around the July-October range for vouchers now. Just as of this meeting at the beginning of December, they're looking from April to July as of the last leadership. conference they had online last week. They believe they're somewhere around the October timeframe. Doesn't mean that's when they're gonna be paid, but they'll have been approved by the state to go to be paid. You're gonna see them next year. Education regulations have gone through processes. They're up for public comment for 60 days. Those are available on the website, or links to those are available on the website. Good and positive comments are just as useful as constructive criticisms of the process. So please go out there and take a look at that. And some of those changes are things that have been executive orders, such as 4-year recertification cycle and a variety of other kinds of things that are there as well. So take a look at those things. The PSE, National Registry, is ending the paramedic original practical skills exam, but they're continuing the current process through 2025. New York State requires PSE, so there is a tag at the state level to look at what you do for all levels, not just the paramedic one. So everything from EMR, EMT, AEMT paramedic, what are they going to do? They talk a lot about sunsetting the EMT-CC, and so there is a bridge right now through Northwell for folks to bridge from CC to paramedic. They didn't want this to be a shot in the dark. They want it to be on a set timeline. They didn't want it to be a surprise. They want it to be very transparent, open, everybody have a good discussion about this. And so they started that process. Please realize that the bridge is online, uses local resources. It costs about $1,500 to do the bridge, and the state reimburses you if you pass. And so it's not an onerous process. It's not something you have to travel to the end of Long Island to do. It's not something that you have to do in 5 weeks. It's not something that is unobtainable. It's not overly costly. You're getting reimbursed. You can do it on your own time using local sources for the PSA. So they're talking about the potential for sunsetting this within the next 2 years. And so that's that.
I could just interject, just for clarity, in case anyone wonders, there's one registered critical care in our region. One.
Wow. Who is it? He happens to be the president of the Hudson Valley Regional Men's Council.
Keep moving on. Not going to be a significant impact here in the Hudson Valley.
Didn't they say that one of the reasons they want to sunset the bridge training is because of decreasing enrollment class by class?
So they want to sunset the CC period. As a part of sunsetting CC would also be sunsetting the bridge program, because when it first started, they had something like 400 plus in the first class. And it's gone down. I think there's 12 in the one starting.
That's what I remember. It was going down significantly.
Yeah.
5.
Yeah. Legislative, we talked a lot about direct pay already. Huge shout out to Onion, FASNY, NYSBERA, state chiefs and districts that got together, to push this forward. Fantastic thing. Yes, speaking with one voice works. That actually has the attention of other agencies and groups who are like, wait, how did EMS do that? They did that? How can we do that? And so, what else can we do? What's next? What's the next ask? And that is essential service, right, that we talked about here. So fantastic. There's some guidance in terms of where policies are going now. So there are state regulations, there's state statute, which comes down to then state regulation, which then comes down to state policy, which then goes out to regional policy and agency policy. And incredulously, I don't know how this works, so somebody much smarter than me at that end of the table is going to have to describe this to me. But policy may not be enforceable, and so they want to move more things towards regs. I continue to go back to the Seinfeld episode where he makes a reservation for a car at the airport, gets there and doesn't have a car. He's like, well, I made a reservation. Like, well, there's no cars. Well, that's the point of the reservation. So if there's a policy, isn't that the point of the policy? But clearly, my brain doesn't work this way. And so they are moving towards things being in regulation, but being a little bit more, not nebulous, but generalized, so that policies from there can be a little bit more specific and can be a little more easily changed. But the regulation is the regulation.
If I could,
So
Dave, I'm just gonna
things-
interject for half a second on that.
Yeah.
Just to give you an example, Mr. Cuomo and I wanted a policy statement to be reversed to affect something that we were trying to put together. And we got on the conference call with two state officials, and when we pitched our idea, the first answer, which we thought was going to be a 2-hour meeting, was done in about 7 minutes. They said, "Where does it say that in regulations?" We said, "Nowhere, but you put it out in policy several times." The policy doesn't mean anything anymore. And we had it changed in about 7 minutes. So we had a couple hours to go to lunch, I think we did. But the point was, it's happening. And that's because there's new blood sitting at the Bureau that's looking at everything. That's a catch-22. Because everything that you're used to doing for the last 10, 15, 20, 30 years, that's gospel. If it's not in legislation somewhere or in regulation, it was just a feel-good thing we did.
On today's education.
The Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away.
Well, I think what it comes down is the Lord can't enforce it.
Right.
So,
On the
unless it's in
Education and
regulation.
Training Committee today, they talked about course sponsorships, and they're putting them on hold to review that process, because that has to be looked at, they feel. And there's, the new people in the E&T are taking a look at stuff.
New
I don't want to take away from your stuff, but things are.
It's absolutely right. Okay, so you're gonna start seeing some of those things happening as well. Talking about, Tim talked about New York State Association of Counties. They are starting to take a look at, or lead on legislation on their own, right? Because they are facing these ideas and issues of, well, who's funding EMS? If volunteers can't do it or aren't able to do it through no fault of their own, God bless all the volunteers that have brought us to where we are today, right? And commercial agencies can't do it because they're not getting paid by Medicare, Medicaid, or health insurance. Where does it fall? And they're going, well, wait, is that gonna fall on us? And how do we manage that, right? And so, they're looking at some legislation, and they're holding meetings, and they want to invite us to those things, to work on this. And so this is a great opportunity to weigh in and work with them. And so it is absolutely essential we do that, because we have to educate them as to what we do, how, and why, but we have to do it with a single voice. It can't just be one group's bent on how it should all be. Okay, Systems Committee, they had Scarsdale and Austining motions were moved upward to the HVREMSCO, and the Lancaster, that Town of Alden, Village of Alden were also moved up. And I'll talk about those in a second. They're working on policy 0606 to discuss about what's in regs and what's the definition of need. And that may really change a lot of CON actions and what it means to have a CON, and is there a need for one or is there a want for one. From Safety Committee, they talked a lot about substance use and mental health. Jennifer Solomon, and she had come and done a presentation, full-day presentation for the Hudson Valley region a number of months ago. It was over the summertime, I think it was, on mental health awareness. Those are still available, and if we want to do those, to get in touch with her to redo some more of those. And hopefully, Brenda can talk about that as well as we get down to the critical stress management tag. They talked about policy 0013 revision, which is all the stuff that you need for best practices to adopt for the 821P policies that you need to have for your agency. When you do an agency recertification, you're supposed to send your policies in. The state will also look at them and review them, so make sure you have all the right things that you need ahead of time during the survey for your agency. And again, all this stuff, I know this is all sort of things floating around here. Please bring this back to your agency, bring this back to your county, bring this back to your county council meeting, tell the agencies that are there, and tell the agencies that are not there, because those are the ones that are gonna be jammed up with things if they're not getting the information, okay? The new business or plan for 2024 from Safety Committee is looking at reduction of lights and sirens. There is a lot of studies to show that the reduction of lights and sirens is showing success, and then they're going to continue to work on that. And there is no negative impact on patient outcomes by not using lights and sirens to go screaming to the scene and then screaming to the hospital. And so we're looking at continuing case studies, looking at this, looking at liability, what other states are doing, etc., but giving responders to judgment to use lights and sirens on the way to the hospital. They're still looking at data, but that seems to be the preliminary movement forward. For the quality metrics, if no one has gone up to the webpage, please go there, take a look at the new QI manual. It was completely redone. We have measures there that are national measures. They're not just state measures. They're not just made-up measures. They're not just what we think looks to be good. There are vetted measures across the nation that are up there. The Quick Start Guide will help work you through it. At the Dutchess County EMS Council, the last meeting we had, we did a presentation on actually doing a quality initiative, and it was pretty successful. I am very happy to come out to anybody's council meeting and do that same presentation for you. Just let me know, and you'll have to bribe me only with a cup of coffee. But I'm very happy to do that. That went very well. We're going to do more of that from the regional level, and help folks do that. Don't do all of the quality measures at once. Start with one, get your feet wet, move forward, and then keep moving forward with ones as you see fit. Okay, that group was also looking at the policy tag 1202, 1203, 2104 related to PCRs and ePCRs. And again, a lot of discussion about what constitutes a patient, what constitutes patient contact, and then all the things that you need in terms of doing your PCR, ePCR, and what's going to go into regulation versus just policy. There's the movement of ePCRs from the 3.4 to 3.5 schematron. What that means is when somebody does a PCR, it has to meet a certain number of rules to be able to lock and pass up to the state. Most PCR vendors all PCR vendors are required to meet NEMSIS values, and then beyond NEMSIS values, sometimes the states and or the regions add additional values. The state had previously had upwards of 1,000 extra data points that they needed to be verified before a PCR could lock, and they've now cut most of those out and brought it down to where every other state in the union is to be somewhere around 300 to 400 additional rules. So it should be a lot easier. You have got to check to make sure that your PCR meets not only NEMSIS requirements to lock and go to the state, but also state and anything from the region. I don't think there's anything else additional from the region, our region. A lot of records will look like they are locked and have gone up, but they have not. So I'm asking you please, from myself, from the region, from the IGEL study group, from the state, from anybody, please go to your agency and make sure they are checking with the state that their PCRs have gone up. When we look at the IGEL data, we reached out to a number of agencies within the Hudson Valley region who said, yeah, our PCRs are going up. We've had 12 uses and the state should have them. And the state hadn't gotten anything since August, even though it looked like it at the agency level. So please go to your agency and check to make sure that these things are going up. Okay, 3.5 will start to take effect in January, and everybody has until July to institute it. We talked about the IGEL data. and it is such a positive thing. We can pretty easily say that BLS providers can insert an eye-gel in an adult patient in cardiac arrest without problem. And we're gonna keep looking at the data. Innovations and Research Subcommittee is working on a number of different projects, but one of the big things that they wanted to put out towards the individual regions was, what are some thoughtful ideas that you guys have done that are innovative, and can you share them? Could be anything, from mobile simulation labs to ambulances and training facilities. There are the Vital Signs Innovation Awards during the Vital Signs Conference, and what they would like to see are 2 innovative things happening in each region to get onto the agenda. Could be anything from financing, consolidation, system design, education, clinical components, etc. So they're looking for those things as well. There is no Med Standards Subcommittee meeting. However, our very own Dr. Raybridge is now the new chair of Med Standards, and so that's pretty cool. There was no CMAC. There's going to be a new track at the Vital Signs Conference, Special Operations and Hazmat. And we talked about Tom Smith from the Office of Mental Health, Dr. Raybridge, most. That was put out. Please go take a look at that. We sent that out today from the region. Something that is really new in that, if you haven't looked at it yet, is that we can now honor a patient advocate. I think they're called a healthcare advocate for a patient. They used to be called a proxy, and we were like, oh, we can't take anything from proxies. Well, now we can, and there's a whole list of things that a proxy can and cannot say for a patient if the patient has signed a MOLST form or has not signed a MOLST form. So take a look at the MOLST form, take a look at that proxy and patient advocate definition, what's in there. And there's training that's online that's available for free. And if you do that training, you get an hour and a half that'll go towards geriatrics or preparatory. And so please send that information out to everybody in your agency. They are going to see this, they're going to be presented with this. And it's brand spanking new. Okay. The Lancaster VAC, Town of Alden, and Village of Alden were seconded motions, moved up to uphold the vote of the HVREMSCO, and they passed. The Scarsdale and Austining discussions were tabled because there was a question about conflict and following bylaws and such. And so on one hand, talking to Dave's point about new things happening at the state and interpretations of legal process and such, and the council itself saying, okay, well, we need to do things in a transparent, open kind of way, which we are trying to do here as well. And so this was part of that process to ensure that folks that could have a voice had a voice, and it was transparent and not just put upon anybody last minute. So those were the reasons for some of those tabled motions for a couple of those agencies. Apologies to those agencies, but we have got to do the right thing the right way all the time, every time. And this is part of that process. The Rural Task Force had done some town hall meetings. I think those are recorded and available. I'm not sure where, but I know they were recording them to make them available for folks to listen to. Those will probably be on the state website. And a lot of the ideas from that report were the same ones that came from the white paper. If you haven't looked at that, you've got to look at that as well, from the state white paper. They talked about credentialing and performance standards. More is going to come out of those, and looking at proposed regulatory and policy changes and setting expectations for performance standards. That's a very interesting topic, and what that has the ability to really potentially shape who can do what in EMS in the future. So it is entirely possible if an agency is not responding to more than 50% of their calls, they're no longer going to be an agency. Just putting that out there, right? And this is a group from around the state. Everybody got the email that's onboardable about joining the group and having their voice. And so these are a lot of things they're discussing, and performance standards are one of those things in a variety of areas. We had the elections. The chair for this coming year is Mike McAvoy. I was moved up to first vice chair, and Terry Hamilton to second vice chair. And if there are no other questions, that is my report. Anthony, you have 30 seconds.
In the beginning, you mentioned the turnover.
I'm sorry.
In the beginning, you mentioned why people leave.
Yes. No, I mentioned that people were leaving.
No, why EMS providers leave, and you said you decided to pay, right? So, just make you aware, you may or may not know, the GEMS article, the recent survey, the national one, is actually has moved from pay to job stress. That's the main reason why EMS providers are leaving.
It is another piece of it. Pay, job stress, there's parity, there's a whole host of things. And some of the national studies have corroborated these as well, right? GEMS, EMS World, some of the other national organizations that have done these things. Pinnacle, NEMT, what's the big one I'm thinking of? Page Wolfberg and Worth. A lot of similar things. They've all sort of talked about the same kind of thing. And yeah, so absolutely pay is one piece of it. Stress in the job, 1000%, right? Absolutely. And so there's a huge push on mental health of providers. And so we really need to focus on that as well. As a big piece of this. So yes, that is correct.
I think one of the scary metrics that was not at this past SEMSCO meeting, but the one before from that same study, was the number of people that anticipate being in the field in 5 years.
Yeah.
That was frightening.
Yes. Yes. Otherwise, everything else is in here, so please take a look at this. And if you have any questions at any time, feel free to reach out. Come up to State Council. It's a hoot.
Yeah. More ways than
It's entertaining.
To David's point, yes, it's a hoot. But you also learn, like the rural task force, for example. None of us here are in rural counties. Maybe you live in rural counties. None of us here are what considered 34 of the 62 counties that are rural, right? I think it was 34.
Yes,
correct.
And their needs don't differ from our needs in many ways, but they also do differ from our needs in many ways. But we're all part of the same system, and they brought up a lot of interesting things. I think that was Monday night, in fact, of that week.
Yeah.
Sitting at that meeting, and there were a lot of interesting things that they were discussing, and they had slightly different perspectives than the rest of the counties do.
Yeah.
And it's important to understand everybody's perspective, because this is what shapes our industry moving forward.
Yeah. Yep.
Outstanding. David, that was an excellent report. I'm going to take 2 seconds as a privilege of the president and kind of echo back what several of you have been saying. For those of you that have not had an opportunity to go to State Council, please come. Only about 1/4 of the work that's done is done actually in committee and meetings. Most of it is done between meetings, dinner, at the bar, whatever it is, right? So there's a lot of great interaction that goes there, and if you've never been there, we would encourage you to go, because a lot of stuff happens, in there. But to that point, when you look at the recognition that the Hudson Valley gets when we go to State Council, it's kind of humbling, because no less than, I would say, half a dozen times, bureau staff, public speakers will reference what the Hudson Valley has done, is doing, or is getting ready to do. And it's a proud moment to be able to know that you're there representing the Hudson Valley, and that all the hard work that you guys put into doesn't go unnoticed. And I know sometimes it feels like it does. To that point, he mentioned it at the end, but coming into the next SEMSCO year, Mr. Violante and Ms. Hamilton will be the first and second vice chairs. which means that in a very short period of time, as long as they don't manage to, get themselves thrown off the council, the Hudson Valley has the potential to hold the chair and the first vice chair seats at the state level. I don't remember a time when a single region had two representatives that far up into really guiding where the state goes. So kudos to David and Terry, who you don't realize put in an exorbitant amount of time in all of these committees and meetings and training. And again, for those of us that go to the state, we're sitting on all those committees, so we know what kind of time and effort goes through there. So I didn't want it to be blown away. Congratulations.
Thank you.
We'll be proud of you. To that point, we also have sitting amongst us a nationally recognized individual who's now rolling his eyes and wants to know why I'm going to pull him out. But if Ms. Pfeiffer could just take a half a second and kind of, share with us what her colleague, Mr. Chan, was awarded, it would be greatly appreciated, because I don't want to mess it up.
Gee, thanks, Dave.
You're welcome. No warning.
Yeah, just the way I like it. So back in September?
I was there.
Yeah. Oh, you were there?
I was there.
Yes, Mr. Chan got to go down to New Orleans and he received the National EMT of the Year Award. The write-up included that he's a part of this this committee and his work that he does as treasurer. It also included the work that he does not only for the Monroe Ambulance but our county, and his you threw me off here, Dave.
It's okay.
His work that he does with the hospitals and working on communication between the hospitals, shortening patient turnover times, and just also in his volunteer career of 25 plus years, he's done 4,000 calls as a volunteer. So it was pretty easy to write him up. I do have to share the funny. So he gets the email that he won, and he ignored it. Gets the email that he won, and he ignores it. So then he gets another email, and my phone rings with, I can't say the word, but what?
Fill in the blank.
What have you done? So when he went to accept the award, he had to be honest and tell them that he thought it was a scam, so he didn't. So congratulations.
Congratulations, Wayne. Just a quick run. And again, not trying to embarrass anybody. Thank you, Nancy. Not trying to put anybody in the spot, but the talent and the reach of that talent is unmeasurable here out of the Hudson Valley. So I would encourage everybody sitting at the table, I would encourage everybody that goes back to their local councils to remind people what can be done if you just put a little bit of elbow grease on the table and put a little bit of legwork in it. We can do some amazing things. So congratulations to everybody.
A classic of that is what Mike Beninati did. The work he did, it started in a parking lot, and the next thing, the poor guy wound up his chair of the tag, and Dave mentioned the white paper that he put out, and it is being quoted by a lot of national organizations. He got the commissioner's recognition, so Hudson Valley contributes a lot to New York State.
Again, for those of you that don't know who Michael is, he was the Director of EMS, Chief of EMS, I'm not sure of his official title, at LaGrange Fire Department.
EMS Administrator.
EMS Administrator at LaGrange Fire Department. So, again, kudos to those departments for allowing these individuals to be able to do that. It's a lot of work, but it does represent what we can do and what we have done, and what I hope we're going to continue to do as we move forward as a council. So, all right, enough of the accolades, the sun's getting bright. I have two, Anthony, anything on Vision 2025?
No.
Or that's pretty much gone by the wayside?
I think that's.
Should we remove it?
Yeah.
All right, we'll remove that from the agenda. Last but not least, because we took Glenn and his team out of order, Ms. Brenda. I'd love to hear from you.
Not a lot to report. I was able to sit down with a member of a very well-hidden debriefing team here in Orange County. Apparently there is a team. It's located in the Sheriff's Department in their Special Operations Division. The team itself is all law enforcement. They are willing to debrief any first responder. I actually found out about it after the 84 bus accident because they did debrief everyone that responded to that, including EMS. It was recommended to me that we move forward with a peer support team for EMS because
Excellent.
that team is very small. Again, all law enforcement, and it goes through the whole all the administrative channels of the Sheriff's Department. So what they might deem a critical incident is not necessarily fair to an EMS provider. You might respond to a call that's very upsetting that someone in law enforcement wouldn't necessarily appreciate the stress involved. So to that end, I've had multiple other conversations with some people involved with the International Foundation. Particularly there's a woman upstate who does the training for that now, statewide, and she's offered to support and help us in any way that she can. The deputy I spoke with was very kind and offered his support and help and knowledge, anything we needed. But the biggest need that I have right now is more people, more input, more ideas.
Okay.
Just more people, more support.
Not a problem. Just let me get to Wayne as a co-chair. Wayne, anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I'm kind of falling by the wayside. Brenda's doing most of the work.
Well, you've been traveling the country here for a little bit, so we understand. All right, outstanding, excellent. Anthony, what did you have?
I just want to let Brenda know that I'm actually certified through ICSF.
So am I actually.
Yeah, and I actually serve on a peer support on a federal level for the folks that respond to disasters.
Great.
So, I mean.
So any input, like I'll include you in any conversations that we have. Most of my conversations are email because people don't have the time to sit down and have a meeting or whatever.
Sure.
I did speak with the deputy in person because we were able to make that work. But I would highly value your input.
Let me know how you want.
Perfect. I'll give you my email and then you can shoot me an email.
So to your point, Brenda, if funding is something that will help support your system, that is one of the opportunities that we can take advantage of, as far as grant writing or applying for grants, because it is, such a hot topic and such a valued piece of information. So, it's a lot of times we don't know what to ask for. Just simply asking for money kind of falls on deaf ears. But when we can show what it's going to be applied to and how it will impact the 6 counties that we operate in, things like that usually get green lighted pretty quick.
We will definitely need funding because we'll have to train people and
Okay.
It's not cheap.
Okay, so that's definitely something that you should keep in mind, that, it gives us an avenue to be able to start looking at funding for that. Any questions for Brenda and or Wayne? Hearing none. That takes us to any other new business.
Just gonna go back to Terry for a second?
Yes, sir.
Or actually, I'll defer to any of the Rockland County guys.
Yes, sir.
About Terry's drive-by on 26th?
Yeah, I saw an email about that.
Yeah, so just, this is a secret, so don't put out the minutes till after the 26th. They're gonna do a drive-by at the Fire Training Center in Rockland County on about 4:30. They're inviting everybody to meet in Boulder parking lot, Boulder Stadium there, about 4:15. They're gonna do the drive-by at 4:30 at the Fire Training Center to honor Terry for all the work that she's done.
I don't think they know why, though.
Hmm?
I don't think they know why, so you need to tell the rest.
Why they're honoring Terry? Well, I'll read the, I'll just read it. So, as most of you heard, that Terry's moving to South Carolina in the next couple of weeks. She has been a past captain of Haverstraw, where she served for served more years than many of you have been alive. She is a current EMS coordinator, where she has responded to several incidents and events. She is first vice chair of the New York State EMS Council, an officer with NYSVERA, and a representative to the Hudson Valley EMS Council as well. She has dedicated her life to helping others, and she will be sorely missed. So, they're having this event for her, and they're also going to have a little reception afterwards at Lynch's Restaurant at the Rotella Golf Course in Haverstraw afterwards. So, if anybody could make it, I think it'd be nice to show.
Mike, what was
show
the
her
date
some-
again?
26th, Tuesday, 26th.
January?
4:30.
No,
No, December 26th.
Day after Christmas.
Day after
Okay.
Christmas.
Good point.
December 26th, 4:15 in the Boulder Stadium parking lot. Emergency vehicles, personal vehicles, just whatever they're gonna do, a drive-by.
Excellent.
And it's a secret, so don't feel terrible.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other new business?
Motion to adjourn.
I will entertain it. So there's Glenn Alvin and Anthony Desang. Thank you, guys. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. Merry Kwanzaa. Happy Kwanzaa. Enjoy your holidays with your families.
Be safe.
And be safe.